In this video, traders are going to explore the reason why I think trading is so hard. Stay tuned. Hey guys, a very warm welcome to you. Alright, so why is trading so hard? On paper it seems like it's the easiest thing to do, and that's why very often we kind of read these books when we first start. I remember when I first started out, 2001, I kind of got this book and it was a big textbook. I remember reading through it and it was showing all the chart patterns, and I thought, oh wow, that's excellent. I've learned these very, very quickly. I'm going to go out, I'm going to make loads of money. Of course, it's not the case at all. You go out and you get, when you're brand spanking new, and you tend to kind of bleed money away because you're trading from a human emotional perspective and you don't have any idea or any strategy, and you're worse than 50-50 ultimately. So why is trading so hard? There's a couple of things here. The first one for me is the fact that the landscape is ever changing. So it's very challenging to make a profit in the current conditions, whatever time frame you look, whatever conditions are now you're watching it. Regardless, even if it's a bull market, a bear market, a range bound market, you have to get a strategy that works. You've got to get your risk reward right. You've got to get your entries right. You've got to have the right market. You've got to, all the stuff that we know is challenging in trading. And then if you do get some traction and it starts to work for you, it could change again in a week, in a month, in a quarter, even intraday. Intraday you've got something that works well and it stops working for a few days, comes back on. It's an ever-changing landscape, and that's the tricky part about trading. It's constantly evolving. The market is constantly doing something different. The participants have different kind of goals of what they're trying to achieve, and different things that are influencing their decisions all the time. It's fluid, it's constantly changing. So when you feel like you've cracked it and maybe you're starting to get some headway, and that's hard enough as it is in a kind of insular sphere, if you like, all of a sudden the game changes completely. The rules completely change, the dynamic completely changes. Breakouts that once were working are now completely the opposite, not working, and you have to then relearn and readjust, which is why I think that beginning traders often will find some traction and then they give it all back again because they're using the same thing that was working then in the market that's just changed completely, and end up giving all the money back and get frustrated and annoyed by that. Whereas as you become more experienced, you recognize that markets are going to change and you're far quicker to kind of dial back and then reassess and find something that's working for the current market conditions, because you've seen different market conditions as you go through. And that's why I think that experienced traders have more longevity, because they're able to adapt quicker. Now, there's something to be said for a lot of traders who were, an example would be, we had the dot-com boom. I just missed out on that, 99, that whole run up to them. A lot of traders made a lot of money, but of course, as it came down, they were buying pullbacks all the way up and it was working for them, and then they lost all the money because they were doing the same thing and this was just a bear market. And so that was pretty much the story for probably 90% of guys out there, especially who were swing trading. And day traders as well. Day traders made a lot of money going up there because they were buying up the stock that was up the most. You could buy it and it would just be so aggressive. Then in the bear market, it just changed completely. And you could say, well, hindsight says you just short the one that's got the most, that's down the most. Yes, but bear market dynamics are slightly different, because often you get those kind of 4 or 5 day rips and then it will come down again. So you have to change and adapt. So one of the things that it is that, and if you think about, let's look at the analogy. So analogy is flying. So if you've ever learned to fly, and I learned to fly a few years, about 10 years ago now, private pilot's license, little 2-seater thing, looks dangerous as anything, but it takes a lot of time and you have to get in. Then you start off and you go with an instructor, of course, and then eventually get to go on your own. You do what's called a little circuit and you land, and then you go and you kind of, a lot of the stuff you're training you do is on your own. But there's lots of things that you've got to do. When you're taking off, there's lots of gauges to watch, there's lots of kind of buttons to press and procedures to learn, as well as stuff that you've got to go through on paper. You've got to make radio calls, do stuff with your feet, do stuff with your hands, lots of things you can imagine. And if you kind of ever flown a plane, you know this, and we're only talking about a little 2-seater here. But imagine then if halfway through the flight, one of the flights you have to do is like a cross-country thing. You have to land at 2 different airports and come back on your own, navigate it, do all the weather, do everything as if you were a kind of a qualified pilot, and that's near the end of the actual test. But imagine if during that, a lot of cognitive load, a lot of pressure on you. Imagine if then literally a randomized button went and all the controls did something different. So, your throttle was now your flaps, your flaps was now your rudder, your radio button was now your kind of a mixture. You get the idea, and your instruments were complete. You'd have to then relearn what everything did, all the way trying not to crash and probably kind of falling down, not knowing, oh, where's my ailerons, where's this, where's that, and then learning it. Then you just kind of learn it and get it stable and go, right, okay, remember what I'm doing. You're still making mistakes, aren't you? Because you're still forgetting something is, and all of a sudden someone spins the wheel again and everything changes around again. You have to relearn it. So I think that's a really kind of one of the good analogies I can think of, is that you grasp it and it changes, and you grasp it and you changes. But what happens if you're experienced and you were doing that and you've seen that so many times? You recognize when things have changed, because what you're doing, the input you're making, isn't giving the output you expect. Are you making trades and you're not getting the return you expect? You're making an input into whatever instrument panel, whatever control you've got, and it's not doing. So then you go through a quick procedure to say, okay, what does what? And you get more accustomed to it. So there's that, and the emotional toll that brings about on a trader. So whilst the landscape is changing all the time, and maybe you go through a long period of time where it doesn't change and it changes multiple times in a short period of time, that's an emotional toll, because of the frustration of, I've just learned this and now it's all changed. That was working very, very well, now it's not working. And it's not the fact that it's not working and it stops making you money. You can probably stomach that. The fact that it's not working and it's now losing you money, and the frustration of trying to find something that will lose you money for a bit until you get it right. And then even then the conditions might adapt just as you start to get it right. So it's very challenging, both from an operational perspective and from an emotional perspective. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. What do you find most challenging about trading? And perhaps I can do a video about that and maybe share something that's helped me, and maybe it will help you. And also, if you've got something you want to add to it, happy to read and learn from you guys as well. Whatever you're up to, take care, keep your risk managed. Bye bye.